Hello, Booktube. Today I am reviewing Harry Turtledove's Ruled Britannia. So I got this a while ago for my birthday last year from my brother Ryan, so it's very nice for him to give it to me. And this is a genre of books that I don't read very often, but I'm very fascinated by, and I've read a lot of them online. I'm referring to the genre of alternate history. So I don't think it gets that much attention on BookTube, but alternate history is a genre in which you have a scenario that is based off real history, but what if it took a different turn? And Harry Turtledove is one of the most prolific alternate history writers. So, for instance, in another Harry Turtledove book I read, which is also good to me, my brother, which is called Guns of the South, that's about a world in which a South African terrorist group goes back in time to give the Confederacy AK-47 so they can beat the Union, which is a crazy example they call Alien Space Bats, which is also more mundane ones like For One of a Nail, which is a book about, I haven't read it, but it's a book about where Britain wins the Revolutionary War. And so there's different scenarios like that, and you have characters, or maybe not even characters, just a nonfiction story. And you try to explore what would happen in that world, but also just a story in general. I would say that Rule Britannia, which is about a world in which Spain successfully invaded England and has ruled the island for 10 years, I'd say that Rule Britannia is definitely more on the side of having a story-driven book rather than a history-driven book. Because it's actually not until the afterword that any real mentions of like real history are made on a serious level, because it's never actually said how Spain wins the invasion, which the author admits is kind of unlikely. It's just presented to you as having been that way from at the very beginning, and it's been that way for 10 years. I actually honestly kind of like this approach. I like that even nonfiction story too, which I've read those kind of things online. But a character and story driven one is nice as well. However, readers here who might be more used to older history, not everyone prefers that approach. Some people prefer a very hard kind of like hard sci, like kind of like how some people prefer hard sci-fi, some people prefer hard alternate history, as opposed to Harry Turtledove in this case having kind of a soft alternate history approach. Anyway, so Rule Britannia, the two main characters in this dystopian, I guess you'd say, well, now it's called dystopian, it's not really fair, but this kind of bleak picture of England is William Shakespeare and Lope de Vega. And William Shakespeare, you probably already know who that is, but Lope de Vega was a historical Spanish playwright, and he fought actually, well, he was on board the Spanish Armada, and he actually was fortunate enough to survive and be able to come back home to Spain where he wrote plays. But in this world, he's been serving as a soldier in the Spanish army for 10 years in England as part of the garrison. So the plot revolves around William Shakespeare joining in a resistance movement to try and overthrow the Spanish rulers by creating a play to inspire the masses. It's called Boudica because it's based off the historic Celtic queen Boudica, who led the Celts against to fight the Romans. However, at the same time, he also has to write a play about the life of King Philip, because he's been commissioned by the Spanish government to do this, since King Philip II is about to die. So he has these two plays that he has to both write at the same time, and they actually show snitches of them from time to time. And he has to have his troupe perform both of them at the same time, and ultimately try and avoid Spanish suspicion, and so he can eventually perform Boudica on the right day. There's a very interesting suspense throughout the entire book. See, Shakespeare is not presented as being completely a hero. He's largely doing it for the money, because both sides pay him a lot of money, and he's actually kind of cowardly. He doesn't really decide, I won't spoil it, but it's actually stated throughout the whole work from the beginning onwards, that Shakespeare, that the whole thing, he's uncertain whether or not he wants to actually put on Boudica or King Philip, and it's a very fateful decision that he'll eventually have to make. Probably the best thing about this book, well, there's two things I liked a lot. The first one was a dialogue. So you see, Harry Turtledove, for blank verse parts, and when he's showing excerpts from the fictional plays, he actually just rips off directly from plays that existed at the time. He admits at the end that he's not good enough at writing blank verse to actually make an attempt at writing Shakespearean dialogue. But the regular prose dialogue that the characters engage in, it's marvelous. So every once in a while I get references to actual Shakespeare plays, and they're kind of obvious, I think, but I think they're kind of charming. It's just an alternate history thing I like. Not everyone appreciates that. Some alternate history readers actually feel that an alternate history book or alternate history work should not contain so much references to real time, even as Easter eggs. Personally, I like that sort of thing. But even without that, the dialogue is actually marvelous. It's really witty. It feels authentically Shakespearean. Like, it feels like people from that time have actually spoken that way. And even if they didn't, I don't even care. It's just so remarkably entertaining to read. Like, clearly the author put a lot of effort into doing that. Even if parts of it that aren't his own, and he got just to emulate Shakespearean dialogue, he clearly chose them out, like chose things that are obscure enough and arranged in a way that was believable enough so that it actually kind of seems like it's the authentic thing. The second thing I liked a lot was how morally gray the book is. Since you have two different perspectives, Shakespeare's perspective and Lope de Vega's perspective, you get the English perspective and the Spanish perspective. And the whole thing is kind of morally gray. So while the Spanish are conquerors, the English themselves aren't really the best. The resistance resorts to a lot of dirty methods that are very morally ambiguous and kind of disgusting, actually. And I won't spoil exactly what happens, but I'd say the ending isn't even an entirely happy one. Like, things are resolved for the characters, I would say, but not for the situation as a whole. And definitely kind of left a very, I thought it was very satisfying, like, sour taste at the end, because it was one that didn't really resolve everything. It definitely was not a one in which the revolutionaries were at all really portrayed as being heroic. They were kind of just, they were doing what they wanted, but it was a lot of it was even just for money. And that was a very interesting take on the idea. Especially when we live in an age, where we got those dystopian novels that are basically all about heroic teenagers casting off their adult depression. I don't read those kinds of books, but I'm probably stereotyping, but in general, that's a lot of people associate. But this book was a very morally gray book, Revolution. And when I read books and material about revolutions and politics and that sort of thing, I really appreciate moral grayness, and it's probably one of the things that I most think I need in order to enjoy something like that. Now, a big criticism of the book you can make, I personally don't have anything against this because I actually like this style of writing, but not everyone does, and if you don't, I would not recommend this book. It's very slow moving. It's not a super long book. It's 175,000. Well, it's kind of long, but I didn't think it's that long. It's not a fast reader, but it's 175,000 words or so, and a lot of people would think that for a slow-moving book like that, that's way too much, and the book is kind of bloated with unnecessary details. I can understand the criticism. Personally, I like slow-moving books, and I didn't consider it a bad thing, but I do admit it is slow-moving. Not everyone likes that sort of thing. However, I can't factor that into my own personal rating, because for me, I don't have a problem with it. Anyway, I also liked how there was a very colorful cast of characters involved. There's many different, not just historical figures, but also just made-up ones as well. And they all have these neat, interesting personalities. If you know the history of it, then it's interesting to see how they interact and the various references they make to their own lives. But also, I think they just make a good cast of characters. You have these people show up with interesting personalities. The female characters are a little bit underrepresented, but I didn't think they were too bad, actually. I thought one of the things that the author and the characters stress is that the female characters are love interests and whatnot. They're not, sexually easy or anything like that. They actually, in fact, if the characters treat them badly, then they get treated badly as well, and those women don't act very friendly towards them anymore. And that's sort of a recurring joke. I think it was pretty comedic overall, both the Shakespearean dialogue and that concept. So yeah, I would give this book a 5 out of 5 stars. As I did mention, though, there is some personal taste involved because I personally like slow-moving books. I wouldn't say I prefer slow-moving books because I like both slow-moving and fast-moving books, but it's definitely something I like, and not everyone likes that sort of thing. So also, some alternate history readers prefer harder alternate history as compared to softer alternate history, kind of like some people, as I mentioned earlier, prefer hard sci-fi to soft sci-fi. If you're one of those kind of people, you probably won't like this book, which isn't a bad thing. It's just because the book is more on the characters and story, but there's not a whole lot of historical content, in terms of how plausible it is. I've been on a lot of alternate history discussion boards in the past, and I found that people are very stickly. Alternate history readers are some of the most harsh critics you get when it comes to criticizing the story's narrative. You think fiction readers are hard, and there's plot holes. For alternate history readers who know a lot about history, they're very critical readers, and a lot of them, to be honest, might not even enjoy this book that much simply because the idea of Spain defeating England is arguably not a very plausible one, as Harry Turtledove mentions at the end. Personally, though, I don't think that's really an issue to me because it's just I'm more interested in the character and the story. But I do admit, if you're into that sort of thing, you might not get as much enjoyment out of this book. But I think it paints a very vivid portrayal of even an ahistorical London at this time. And I love them, as I said before, I love how morally gray it was. I love the dialogue of it and how well the author tries to emulate the dialogue of the period. And the colorful cast of characters, the comedy, and even the little Easter egg references. So yeah, I really enjoyed this book. 5 out of 5 stars for me. Reflects personal taste. And yeah, that's my review. If you like this, please leave a like, subscribe, comment. Try to get me to the top of the search results. Although, a tiny channel, it's not really that important. And yeah, have a nice day.